Hello, everybody. Welcome to Module 4. I am at home today working remotely. You can see I have my fireplace. It's not really, but it's what I wish because it's actually a cold day in Florida, so it's very unusual here. Today, I am going to be talking to you about Module 4. And I kind of wanted to just, if you see my head turn, I actually at my house I have three screens. I think the level of my multitasking is almost, maxed out. But so I have to turn a little bit. I just wanted to review a little bit of where we've been. So Module 1, we looked at characteristics of scientifically based literacy research, and all of you, that's where you read. You had two articles to read, and you completed an infographic. Uh, they were very, very good. In Module 2, that module, we talked about, you had quite a few articles to read there. And in that module, you had a discussion forum where you identified the theoretical framework that you wanted to study. And then you wrote a paper about a theoretical framework in literacy. And so that chapter or that module was really about theoretical frameworks behind some of the strategies. In Module 2, the concentration, you read about early childhood, scientifically based methods in early childhood. Your assignment was we didn't have a discussion board that week because you had a video assignment where you were to apply the theory that you learned in a Module 2 to a lesson. That brings us to Module 4. So I want to talk to you about that. So this week, we are looking at applying scientifically based research in trauma. You have two assignments. You have a discussion board assignment. Your discussion board, it says, in your initial post, answer the following questions. What will you do to apply trauma-informed instructional strategies in your literacy instruction? Support your reasoning with scientifically based research evidence. Cite at least two scholarly sources. And you have four scholarly sources that you're reading today that I'm going to go over in a minute. And then you're going to do an IRA. Before you do the IRA, I'm going to show you what you're going to be reading. So you have, and I'm going to talk about these articles too. You have four different articles that you're going to read. And I'm going to come back to this, but you're going to read one about trauma-informed schools related to school libraries. You're going to read about, let me just go over them now. The first one is trauma-informed school libraries. So I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things about this particular article. So let me expand it a little bit. This begins explaining what an ACE is. That stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. I'm going to go more into that in this video, but it defines what adverse childhood experiences is. And then it goes into the entire articles as a librarian, or you could even put that into as someone that works with literacy and books. How can you support students that have those adverse childhood experiences? And this is an article about a school that had a 3-phase professional development on trauma-informed teaching that began with professional development, shifting into a trauma-sensitive mindset, it said, and then going into learning specific strategies like de-escalation strategies, self-care, so forth. So that's that article. And it's a good article. Now, the reason I'm going over these articles is one of your assignments today, besides the discussion board, is you are to pick one of the articles, one of these four, and you're going to write a paper. It's going to be like 3-4 pages called an IRA. That stands for Insights, Resources, and Application. So as you're reading the article, you pick one. You need to read all four, but pick one to write the paper on. You're going to write about 3 insights that you had. What did you learn from the article? Then you need to explain resources that are outside of that article that support the article. So, like if you read the one about the library, you would need to find another resource that backs that up and write about that. And then the last part is application. So these aren't going to, so how would you apply that? So this paper is not tremendously long. It'll probably be about 4 or 5 pages, maybe, with your title page, the content, and then references. So you could write your article about um, the one with the libraries. The second one is, let's look at another one here. It's trauma informed elementary schools. And I just got done reading all of these, so I wanted to point out a couple of things to you about these articles. I always have to go back and reread, make sure I know what I'm saying here. Okay, so this article is about trauma informed elementary schools looking at early intervention of young children. And this one really explains again what trauma informed teaching is, what an ACE is, and it goes into talking about how it gives you some research about how trauma does impact learning. But in this particular article, they implement PBIS. And they say that PBIS is one way to support trauma informed teaching. I did not see a lot of research to support that. You may be a big PBIS proponent. I've worked in schools with PBIS. The research can be goes both ways. So that may be something you may want to research: is PBIS really effective or not? The whole time I was administrator, I never did PBIS, but a lot of schools do. So you'll need to do the research and see what you feel. But this particular article is about a school that implemented trauma informed strategies, and they looked at students' needs. And so, but the behavior aspect of it was considered in that one. Another article, Trauma Informed Pedagogy, Rethinking the Graduated Instructional Prompts in Inclusive Physical Education. Some of you may be special education teachers. I've been a special education teacher. We know, especially with kids that are special education teachers, we do a lot of prompts. And those prompts, I'm going to go down here a little bit, as I really thought this was a fascinating article. I'm going to go down here a little bit. So some of the prompts can be, first, we want them to complete the task without a prompt. We may have to give them an indirect prompt, like what would you do next? We may have to do a direct prompt, say, you need to place your foot here. We may have to have nonverbal gestures to show them what they need to do. We may have to model through, could involve a video system or something. But then it gets to minimal physical support. And then it gets to hand. A lot of times even in special education, we do hand over hand activities. This is a really interesting article because what it talks about is sometimes if we get to that point where we're using partial physical guidance or even full physical guidance, that can impact kids that have trauma. It's almost like set them off. So it's a really interesting article. But what is just devastating that I read, the statistics. If you read this, trauma in schools, it talks about, there was a study by Sullivan and Nuxton, I hope I'm saying that right. It says students receiving special education services were maltreated almost 3 times more than general education. I mean, we would hope that no kids would be treated badly, but these are more than in the general ed. 25% were labeled with intellectual impairment. Students with behavior disorders are at a higher risk. talks about students that were moderate and severe were 2.9 times more likely to have emotional abuse, 3.4 times to have physical abuse, 5.3 times more to be neglected, and 6 times more likely to be sexually abused. So our most vulnerable kids, statistically, according to this, have trauma. And a lot of them can't even articulate that. So it's really just horrible. But I hope it's something that you'll look at. And it talks about what other ways can we use except for that graduated, maybe physical touch to get a kid to redirect. Sometimes that can be very traumatic. The last article, I think, is the one on, hope I am showing you this one correctly. That may have been the one I just had. Is called Trauma Informed Schools. Sorry, I did the wrong one. Maybe this one is it. I think this, nope. Here it is. Okay. So the last article is Trauma Informed Elementary Schools for Early Childhood. Did I already talk about that? Maybe I already did. So, no, I didn't. Okay, so this one is talks about a training for trauma informed teaching using an approach called ARC, which you teach. It goes through attachment, learning things like consistent response, routines, and rituals, teaching kids self regulation, and then competencies related to executive function and self development and identity. So it's a building block that you can use. And in this research project, helping students or teachers understand trauma, they had coaches that went in. So you're going to pick one of these four, and you need to read all of them. And there's some pretty good videos we have here. And after you have done that, again, you have your discussion post that you're going to do. And remember, in your discussion post, you do need to cite at least 2 scholarly sources it has for this one. And then you're going to do your IRA insights, resources, and application, 300 to 500 word essay, insights, new ideas on the topic, resources that are related and expand your knowledge, and an application. How will you apply it? As always, go to the rubric, look at that rubric, and really do that backward design so that you'll make a good grade. The rubric has things like content, the insight that you learned, what were the resources, application, and then I look into writing. So again, look at that. If you look at the rubric, you'll do well in my classes if you kind of do that backward design. Okay, so that's talking to you a little bit about your assignments, but I wanted to go into a little bit more about trauma and how it impacts kids. And I think this is really important. So I'm just going to go because it has, I think this is something it's really personal to me, and I want to be able to share it. So let me. I think I have too many things open here. Okay. Try again. Here we go. Okay. So I hope you can see this. I'd like to make it big. Let me see if I can make it bigger. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to, sorry, I'm really trying here so I can see the whole thing, but struggling. Okay, so it has at the top, ACEs can be divided into abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. So abuse, it's going to be, of course, we're thinking about sexual abuse, physical abuse, and emotional abuse. Neglect can be physical or emotional neglect. And then we have household dysfunction. If you are living with parents that have maybe mental illness or incarcerated, uh, if you witnessed a parent that was abused, physically abused, substance abuse, and even divorce. And then it goes into showing you, and again, let me see if I can make this bigger. Abuse, we have 28% of, uh, there's a survey that you can do called the ACEs survey, which I'll show you. And we can see that 28% of people have experienced physical abuse, 20% sexual, and 10% emotional. And then we get into things like neglect, and you can see the numbers here, and household dysfunction. Now, this little chart's really interesting because what you can do is you can take what we call an ACEs survey. And the ACEs survey basically uh, it evaluates the number of ACEs that a person has. So I'm going to show you that. And okay. Well, sorry guys, I'm struggling here. Let me see if I can find it again. Here we go. Okay. So here is the ACEs survey that you can take. You can, you have to answer this question from the list below, place a check mark next to the category that you've experienced prior to your 18th birthday. So you can look at these things and, did your parents or adults hit, punch, beat, or threaten to harm each other? That would be one. Did you live with someone that was in jail? So this will give you a number, what they call your ACE score. And so I think what is interesting is if you go back to the PDF that I showed you earlier, I'm going to show you this one again. We can see that the risk that goes up depending on the amount of ACEs, and look how that goes up 0 to 1. So the more ACEs, the higher the risk factor. And then we go into what are some of the behaviors, or what are some of the outcomes. Someone that has 4 or more ACEs, you can experience things like smoking, alcoholism, drug use, missing work. Physical health, stroke. STDs. It's just, it goes on and on. So I'll give you this PDF. I think it's a great PDF to consider. And so I wanted to show you that. The other thing I wanted to show you is, sorry, seems like I'm struggling here today. I think because I have about 50 tabs open. Here's another little information that it shows you the effects of adverse childhood experiences carry into adulthood. So we can see that people with ACEs score 4 or more dies an average of 20 years sooner, 4 times more likely to become depressed. You can see the statistics, 32% more likely to have learning and behavior problems. So, I've been doing this for a lot of years, 34 years, long time. And I can tell you, this is what I've seen. I have seen that kids that have high ACEs, they're the ones that end in, there's a lot of times, many times, misdiagnosis for behavior disorders or OCD or ADHD instead of addressing the big problem. And that's important that we do. So I just wanted, and I'm getting off topic here, not really, but a little bit. And I just wanted to talk to you about my own life. So personally, if I do this with my undergrad students, and I have them take the ACEs test, and we go outside. And I saw this on Facebook, and I kind of adapted it a little bit. And I had them stand in a line, and I said, there's a race, and it's this race of life. And when you're a teacher, you're going to have kids, and you want all your kids to be successful. And I just named off some of the ACEs. I said, if you had a parent, if both of your parents were married, take a step forward. If you never had to worry about food, take a step forward. If you grew up in a household where your parents did not fight, or well, they're all going to fight, but did not physically abuse each other, step forward. And I started naming these things. I could see in my class, I had some students that were way ahead and some that were way back. And I told them, I said, I want you to think about yourself. I want you to think about kids that you're going to have. You're going to have some kids that are going to come to your school that you're going to work with. They're starting way behind. And guess what? It's no fault of their own. They did nothing. That's just the cards they have. If I was to do this ACEs test, I would have been at the very back. Almost every one of these, I probably would have, I think I did it and I had 9 out of 10. But what I'm here to tell you is that's not the end of the story. Of course, we are, I hope your Christian teachers, you know, that Christ will, will help you. But I can say in my life, I had supports. I can't say it was just all, hey, I pulled myself up by the bootstrap. No, I had resources. It wasn't my school necessarily. I can't even think of my school helping me at all, but it was my church. I had great mentors. And I also learned, and I've done research on this if you are interested, about resiliency. I learned to be resilient. And one of the things that we have to teach kids that have a lot of ACEs is resiliency and grit, how to advocate for themselves, because these are the kids that aren't going to have, you know, I see them in college, even at Southeastern. They come to school. They don't have any college. They don't have any money. They have to advocate for themselves. And so I want you to realize that, yes, this can have a really dramatic impact on kids. Of course it can. But as educators, and especially when I was administrator, this was, I mean, I had to make sure those resources were there. As a teacher, you have to make sure that students know what the resources are. Parents know what the resources are. Just a reminder, everybody is a mandatory reporter. It doesn't matter if you're in a Christian school, a private school, if you're an educational therapist, one-on-one, or it doesn't matter. We are all mandatory reporters. So don't forget that. We need to make sure that we're protecting our kids, all of our kids. And so let me see if there's anything else I wanted to talk to you about ACEs. Yeah, there was one more thing. I wanted to show you a video. I think one of the best things that, I shouldn't say best, I like this too, but many years ago, I worked in Louisville, Kentucky, in one of the poorest schools in Kentucky. It's in inner city Louisville. If you're from Kentucky, you know it's Louisville, not Louisville, from Louisville. And I was a professor at the time at the University of Louisville, and there was a school that, like I said, the poorest performing public school in the state of Kentucky. And the principal came to the university and said, I need somebody. I want to do a partnership. And at the time, my chair said, Christine, I think you'd be good for this. And I'm so glad he did. So what I did was I had my classes at this school, this inner city school. We created a University of Louisville clinical site, a professional development school. I taught all my classes. Instead of teaching them at the university, I taught them at Atkinson. And I want to show you a video clip of this because I think this is an example of what you can do to reach kids in trauma, because these kids had trauma. All of them did. And so I want to show you because I think it really shows how what a trauma-informed school looks like.
Once everything's perfectly organized, I'll start working on my thesis.
As that there was a part of our community that had been left behind. And it had been left behind economically, socially, didn't have the very best in healthcare, been left behind educationally. And so we've created our Signature Partnership Initiative. We designated 5 schools as our Signature Partnership schools that we're going to work with. And J.B. Atkinson is one of those schools.
Dewey Hensley. I'm the principal of Atkinson Elementary. When I first arrived, Atkinson was the lowest performing school in Kentucky. The average income when I first got here was $12,400 per family. So there was a great deal of poverty that characterized this school and all the baggage that comes with that. What we've been able to do is pool together enough resources and wonderful people through our signature partnership with the university to make good decisions and figure out exactly what we need to do. So we've been able to leverage the Kent School of Social Work. We've brought the School of Nursing in. We certainly have leveraged the School of Education and brought in their expertise. While most schools would be happy to have 2 or 3 Louisville Writing Project teachers in their building, we have 13. That has led to us having the largest jump in writing in the state's history. In one year, we had a 55-point jump in our writing performance. Kids from poverty can learn. All they need is the right instruction. All they need is to be surrounded by caring adults that will love them even when they don't love you back.
Okay, so again, I loved working with the principal, Dewey Hensley. Is one of my best friends, and he actually ended up becoming the chief academic officer of Louisville, Jefferson County. That's the largest school district in Kentucky. So, and he and I've worked together at Havasupai, actually. So I wanted to show you that this is one way that we address trauma, and how the number one way we address trauma is we really wanted to have the best teachers we could. So we trained all those teachers. They were trained in what we call the Louisville Writing Project. It was to teach writing. We trained them in, I used to teach this, it's a year-long class in reading for them. So we did the reading. We had just all kinds of teacher training, the best teachers that we could get in that school, the best nurses, the best social workers, with a common purpose and high expectations. You have to have high expectations when you have kids that have trauma. You're giving those supports, but you still have those high expectations. So my last story, and then I'm going to shut up. I remember just growing up with a lot of the trauma that you're talking about. And I remember just very low expectations for me. No one really had a lot of high expectations. This is probably pretty personal, but I remember when I was a teenager, I was dating someone, and my mom said, "Oh, he's a really good guy." And I said, "Why do you think he's good?" And she said, "Well, he has a job, and he doesn't beat anybody." And I remember thinking that was a level of expectation that I was growing up in. That's when I left and went to Southeastern, which was just a total miracle in and of itself. Fast forward about, 15 years. I have my youngest son, Samuel, and I ended up getting my doctorate. My husband got his doctorate. I was a professor at the time. My husband's a chaplain. And my son comes home and he says, "Mom, you do not know what it's like, because everyone expects so much out of me." And I remember just tearing up and thinking, you know what? I don't know what that was like. Do not talk to me about having high expectations. Your teacher's having high expectations. Talk to me if they have low expectations. Then I'm going to worry. You have to have high expectations for all kids. It doesn't matter. They can all learn, and they need good teachers. Not just good, they need excellent teachers. They need you, whatever your job, if you're an educational therapist, if you're a classroom teacher, if you're a principal, whatever you are, those kids need us. So I'm going to shut up. I know this was a long video, but we had a lot to say. So I hope you'll do well in this, and I hope you'll enjoy the research and learn from it. Have a great day.